jak rosa na słońcu, zapanujem nimi, bracia, u swojej storonci. Duszu cilo mi polożem za naszą swobodu i pokażem mi bracia kozackiego rodu.
Welcome to the Beau Show. The opening song that I performed is the Ukrainian national anthem. And I want to tell you why I performed it. Right now, I'm sure you've seen many leaders and people wear a badge or lapel pin with the Ukrainian flag. They see it as a sign of support for Ukraine. And I'm sure that most people likely have good intentions in wearing it. But my concern is that it is one great big virtue signal. A virtue signal is when someone signals to others how virtuous and wonderful they are for showing this quote-unquote support for some cause of the moment. In this case, Ukraine. Mind you, very few of them will actually do anything other than wear that pin or change their social media photo to the Ukrainian flag. The reason that I wanted to sing their anthem is not to signal any virtue myself, but rather to actually understand what is in that anthem and the meaning therein to gain some historical perspective. The anthem talks about the glory and freedom of Ukraine not having perished. The lyrics come from 1862 by the poet Pavlo Chubinsky. In the early half of the 20th century, Ukraine was unsuccessfully trying to make itself independent from Russia. Following Ukraine's secession from the Soviet Union, this piece was adopted by Parliament as the official anthem for Ukraine in 1992. Some scholars think that the Polish song Poland is Not Yet Lost had influence on Chubinsky's lyrics. The song became the state anthem of the Ukrainian Republic in 1917, although not officially by any state government. Once the USSR came along in 1922, the anthem was immediately banned by the Soviet regime. Of all the Soviet republics, this particular one for Ukraine was the only anthem that was banned because they were scared of its nationalist sentiment. Soviet leaders instead wanted a song that made Ukraine and the USSR equal among equals, that expressly mentioned the Communist Party. So they chose a piece by Pavlo Tachina, which became the official anthem from 1949 until 1991. And it was highly unpopular in this communist period in Ukraine. In 1992, however, it was adopted by Ukraine's parliament, with Mikhailo Verbitsky's music set to Chubinsky's lyrics. The only folks to reject this anthem were the communist and socialist members of Ukrainian parliament. Shocker. Here's an interesting musical observation about the anthem. Because Verbitsky was a clerical church composer, the anthem has a certain clerical or church-like feel to it, probably influenced by Franz Schubert. The anthem has this carry the torch energy to it that can only be traced to a people hungering and longing for freedom from oppression. Remember that I mentioned that the Soviets got rid of the song so that they could opt for a more communist-friendly song. That's what communism does. It gets rid of anything spiritual, religious, or any sentiment that does not worship the specter of communism itself. The state is God in that case. I use all of this background about the Ukrainian national anthem because music many times is a kind of barometer of what is going on and where we are. We know that music is, of course, a form of expression, and in free societies and in free countries, free expression is allowed. Furthermore, think about our own Star-Spangled Banner. It came from oppression too. When Francis Scott Key was looking to see if the American flag was still there, raised as the British battled the revolutionaries, that's why he wrote the song. These songs come from great strife, and so the lyricist of the Ukrainian national anthem also wrote this piece with a similar sentiment. Think about the lyrics. Luck will smile on us. Our enemies will perish. Brothers, we will live happily in our land. We'll not spare our souls or bodies to get freedom. See, that is a sense of sacrifice. Ukraine is not dead yet. And I think we are seeing that in spite of Vladimir Putin. Ukraine is not dead yet. Ever since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we have been hearing the Ukrainian anthem being performed all across the world. And I want to make it clear that my performance of the anthem is firstly with empathy towards the Ukrainian people who are caught up in all of this out of no fault of their own, many of whom are in bomb shelters with innocent children trying to find exile, as the men must stay behind to fight. So of course, everyone can have empathy for those people who are caught up in this mess. And we can also have empathy for Russian people who may entirely disagree with Putin's actions, who are also caught up in this. And you're now seeing a very anti-Russian sentiment that is undeserved, especially for those Russians who may have come to the United States or elsewhere. Just like Ukrainians, they might have left their country to pursue the same type of freedom that we have. So, for one thing, I sing the anthem to support anyone who craves freedom, which is one of those inalienable rights that God gave us. For all practical purposes, it is the reason that they flee westward, all the way to America. No one should be holding Russian people, especially those who crave freedom, responsible for the actions of Vladimir Putin. However, the conflict is not as simple as one man's aggression. We know that Putin has viewed NATO expansion as aggression, and so he feels that he has to respond to that aggression. That is not quite as simple as, say, Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait. This is far more complex, because as we know, China can be a major player in this conflict, especially if they supply Putin with any sort of military support. That could be a game changer. Now, we also know that China wants to do the same thing to Taiwan that Russia is doing to Ukraine. They've already been teasing it. Zelensky seems like a hero. I mean, he's a normal guy fighting for his country and for his people. Who wouldn't admire that? But is he some wonderful leader? Has Ukraine been the bastion of freedom for its people? The country has been notoriously corrupt. Look no further than then Vice President Joe Biden's interest in getting the previous Ukrainian leader Poroshenko to fire a certain prosecutor because of his son Hunter's business dealings with the oil and gas company Burisma. The Bidens have vested interest in Ukraine and have for quite some time. Is it any wonder that Biden is all gaga for Ukraine? I wouldn't put a lot of faith in Joe Biden. He has proven himself to be incapable of both domestic and foreign affairs. In fact, most experts would probably agree that Biden's weakest area is his foreign policy. But now that we have some perspective, let's revisit the Ukrainian anthem again and really talk about what's at stake here. The glory and freedom of Ukraine has not perished. Yes, that is true. Not yet, at least. They have managed a very admirable and formidable defense against this attack. Luck will smile on us, brothers. Well, that remains to be seen. But so far, yes, they have been rather lucky. Maybe they've been lucky because they've been so prepared for this. Our enemies will die as dew does in the sunshine. Well, many Russian soldiers have indeed perished in this conflict and now seem to be going on the defensive because their offense is stalling out, much to Vladimir Putin's chagrin. We'll live happily in our land. Well, once again, too early to tell. Maybe the aftermath is a redrawing of the map in some respect in Ukraine. The problem is that many of those in eastern Ukraine see themselves more as Russians. So that complicates what a united Ukraine really looks like.
Душу ціло ми положим за нашу свободу.
We'll not spare our souls or bodies to get freedom. I think that's the most admirable line of this entire anthem, because most people know the stakes of freedom. You give it your all. You spill blood and body and soul. Perhaps the soul being the most important of all. Because without a soul, there is no nation. When I think about the American revolutionaries, they were so committed to the soul of this new nation and were willing to give it all. It seems that Ukrainians are also committed to this. What I think is suspicious is how the world and various entities wish to capitalize on this conflict. Whether that is to create a new global digital currency, whether that's to create a reset, to benefit the military-industrial complex, to extend NATO's influence, or other various reasons. They don't all have to be necessarily nefarious, but remember that war and crisis are always ripe for opportunity because they breed fear. And I think we all saw how the COVID pandemic was used as a tool of governmental fear and manipulation. Putin is clearly using the tool of fear to try to frighten Ukrainian civilians. And he does so in the name of trying to protect them. He is creating the framework of Slavic unity. But many Ukrainians just don't see it that way. Perhaps the Russian-speaking civilians in Crimea or Donbass do, but not everyone. So he uses fear to manipulate the mind. I think that this is still an extension of a Soviet mindset. Tell someone you have to hurt them to help them. Big Brother will look out for you. But watch out if you cross Big Brother. Let's face it, it's not like Russia is a model of democratic proliferation or some prosperous nation. I think we can all agree that Putin's methods are anti-democratic and they're anti-humanitarian. He also spins the media how he wants it. But you have to ask yourself, why did Joe Biden help Putin's Nord Stream pipeline, but shut down our very own Keystone XL pipeline? He wants to blame Putin for high gas prices, but Putin had nothing to do with the rise in gas prices that began a year ago under Biden. Inflation is not Putin's fault. Biden's bad policy is. We have to hold Putin accountable for what he's doing, yes, but we also have to hold Biden accountable for what he's doing. And as for Volodymyr Zelensky, I'm not sure what to make of him. On one hand, he seems the hero, the guy who will put himself into the fight for his nation and his people. Who wouldn't respect that? But ultimately, who pulls Zelensky's strings? Who can control him? Who will hold him to account for any more corruption in that country? I think we all hope for a diplomatic resolution to this conflict. After all, without it, more civilian, innocent lives will be lost. That means talking, a diplomatic dialogue, something that Joe Biden cannot and will not mediate because he is incapable of doing so. Well, Putin is not scared of Biden. He's likely more scared of NATO and what it aims to do in that area. Biden has mismanaged our energy situation and just blamed Putin for it. Let's blame Putin for what he actually has done, not for an energy crisis that Biden himself created when he capitulated to the green energy alarmist. So, with all this perspective, I do want to acknowledge that which we know and that which we do not know. It's a lot to parse through. And I honestly think it's just too easy, too simplistic, and far too trendy to make a point to signal your support for Ukraine. If you're going to do so, realize why you are doing it and what you want to see. For instance, I think about Give, Send, Go, and even a charity like Samaritan's Purse, which is a Christian charity that provides physical and spiritual support for those in need, especially internationally. According to Charity Navigator, they have a 95 out of 100 score. So you can give to them with pretty good confidence. Their accountability and their transparency rating is a 100 out of 100. On Charity Watch, they get an A-. My point is, give with passion, certainly, but give with purpose. Don't do it to feel good about yourself. Do it because you want to help, and know that that money is following the child or the family or the refugee. And honestly, know the history of the conflict and why you are helping. I encourage you to open your hearts, but also open your minds. It is easy to get played in the world of money. How you support Ukraine is totally up to you, but do it with diligence and with dignity. I'm Beau, and that's the show.